What is going on, boys and girls of YouTube? You guys loved that last tier list breakdown, which I'm really happy about. So now we're going to cover all the tiers, and this will be something I'm going to regularly do on every tier list that I do. So hopefully this is covering the information you want. I read a bunch of the comment, pretty much read every single comment, and I saw some really good ideas like matchups and counter matchups and things like that to throw in with the information. So I'm going to start doing that the best I can. This next tier is a longer tier. There's a lot of gods, so I'm going to be detailed, but I don't want to spend 10 minutes on every god. So hopefully I can knock that out, and we're just going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. I don't want to waste y'all's time. Make sure you're in the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you are, you're really supporting the hell out of the channel, and if you're not, you literally can click one button and make a really big difference just by being that one click. So go ahead and do that. And we're talking about S tier today. If you didn't see the video yesterday or 2 days ago, it was SS tier and C tier. I covered the best gods and the worst gods in this tier list, right? But today we're covering S tier, and you're starting to talk about a lot more gods. Smite's in a very strange place where a lot of gods are very good, as in priority, perfect picks. Not much, if anything, is going to really counter them. They obviously can be beaten, but these gods are just tippity top. And usually in Smite, for the longest time, for 9 years or 8 years, S tier was never filled like this. It was S would have like 4 to 6 gods max. S tier would usually have like maybe 4 to 6 as well, because those are the ones getting through that weren't getting banned. And then A plus was where A plus and A is where you saw your core, like full everything was there. It's a little bit different. So we're talking about it. Opwash first up on the list. I don't think a lot needs to be said. Opwash's priority has peaked because healing is now everywhere in the game. Healing gods are all very strong, and Opwash is one of the few gods with 100% anti-heal. It is kit and can 100% anti-heal the healers. On top of that, his pressure, his team fight is very good in the jungle. The small corridors allows him to massively AoE damage when in jungle fights and even in the lane. And then his ultimate is a massive space creator. I say space creator, I mean people aren't going to stand in it. So you could use it to push people back, to get people behind you, to kind of peel for yourself. And it's a lot of chaos that it creates, and it doesn't create it for your team, it creates it for the enemy team. So it's going to be a big value for you in team fights. And like I said, in these small corridors in the jungle, your damage kind of peaks really high because you're able to hit 2, 3, 4 gods, not even on purpose, just because the positioning forces it to happen. Which, if you saw at the beginning of this year, Opwash got played a lot. Oddly enough, Mindy, my duo queue, he only played Opwash. He's an Opwash main. I think he has like 150 games on Opwash. And over the course of us grinding up to Masters, everyone started playing his gods. All the top mid lane players, pro players. He was playing in support and solo and everywhere, and people started playing it there too. And this was before healing took over. So now that healing has taken over, Opwash's rating and priority skyrockets. Counter pick wise, gods you want to play into an Opwash, or if you are an Opwash, things you want to watch out for are just heavy dive comps with heavy CC. You don't have a CC immunity. You pretty much are playing around bursting from range. You do have self peel and good damage on top of yourself, but heavy CC gods and multiple dive gods. So a solo that's going to dive into a lot, a jungler that's going to dive into a lot. Rama being on the enemy team is going to help dive. Rat gods like those, like Thor, obvious dive gods. That's what you're going to be looking out for. Atlas next up on the list. Atlas is just Atlas. We've seen Atlas be top tier in that support role since he came out. I think since he came out, he has one of the best hard single CCs. He can hit more than one person, but that hard single pickup and throw is one of the best CCs in Smite's history. It's a extended lockdown where the person can't move and you displace them, you move them. That can't be rivaled. On top of that, his movement speed he gives off of his 3 is crazy. His ultimate is extremely underrated with the protection shred and its presence on the map and the chaos that creates. Talk about Opwash's ult's chaos. Atlas ult looks like it's doing way more damage than it is, and it causes people to overreact, which is very strong. In terms of counter picks, you are, and his laning phase is amazing. I think we all know that. He is very good clear. He doesn't struggle with a lot. He can safely clear or be in your face while also poking and setting up his teammates, obviously. Counter pick wise, you're not really looking at a lot of counter pick at all. Things that are knockup immune are going to do better into him because he won't be able to pick them up unless he hits the stun. So, you know, there's going to be some value there. But overall, he isn't getting counterpicked because he's a support. He's a strong support with mobility, and you know he's tanky and he's got CC. You're not really counter picking him. You're just playing around him. Bakasura has spiked and probably peaked in his priority of this S tier, and it's because of the 2 buff. If you didn't see these patch notes, his 2 used to be on a 15-second cooldown. His 2 is his creep eat, the minion munch, whatever you want to call it. I don't know why I just said that. Oh, it's gonna come out bad. They moved it down to 8 seconds. So he is the closest god to clearing the jungle and rotating around that you'll get to Mercury, who is the best clearing god in the game, one of the best farming gods in Smite's history, and currently one of the best jungler in the game. Baka now rivals that because he has similar-ish mobility. He is a hard auto attack god that can go crit or auto attack build. But that creep eat paired with Golden Blade means he is max speed farming the jungle, and on the flip side, he's max speed invading the enemy jungle. He's very safe at invading because he has that ultimate to buy him time, slow people off, cripple them to run away. He also has his leap. That leap is going to get him over walls. So when he's playing against matchups like Mercury, he can leap over a wall where Mercury can't follow. That's an advantage on an invade that people don't realize. In terms of his team fight, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and be like, his team fight is amazing. But once again, with these smaller corridor jungle fights, Baka is doing better than he was before. In a lane gank, you have a lot of room to move around when a Baka ults you, right? You can go left, right, out of his circle ult. You can back towards the enemy team, whatever. In the jungle, you're usually running one way. It's usually back towards your side of the map, and it's in a funneled corridor. So that means Baka is going to be AoEing you down. That pressure, that chaos, that cripple, potentially burning beads, is very valuable in this meta and these late game jungle fights. Also, with most people getting to late game, Baka gets there faster. Most other gods, Mercury, like I said, being the only one that probably does it any faster, and that's a massive value in itself. Counter pick wise, you're looking at gods that don't get punished by cripple, because if you aren't worried about the cripple, you could just kill Baka, through his ultimate. Having gods that have CC immunities, instant CC immunities, is going to be valuable, like Daji. Baka jumps on a Daji ults up in the air, wastes the whole ult, burns beads as well if playing smart. Those are the kind of gods and matchups you're looking out for. Ravana is another one I really think would be very strong into the Bakasura 1v1 in actual team fights. But the thing is, you're always matching up with the clear as well. And Mercury's going to be the one that dumpsters Baka in terms of clear. It'll be somewhat closer than a lot of these other gods, but, not quite the same. Next up is Chiron. Chiron matching Manticore on ability hunters. Chiron's the best ability hunter. Very good clear, very good team fight presence. And really his spike is that his late game right now with the ability items in the game is he can one-shot your mage or your hunter in the late game team fight, which is usually very difficult. So sieging phoenixes or defending phoenixes, Chiron can automatically siege or defend by himself off of hitting his ultimate and then pressing 2. It'll 100 to 0 somebody that doesn't have Aegis. If they do have Aegis, you burn the Aegis, plus you create a lot of pressure onto them. They either have to back off or they're sitting there poked out a little bit. And that is where Chiron excels, his distance fighting in team fights. He fails or struggles when being dove. Hard CC is going to counter him. Yes, he's not going to be immune during his 3, but his 3 can be hard CC'd by cripples, by stuns, by silences, by taunt. Like, there's a ton of stuff that can stop him. He's not super mobile. It's that ultimate really is what carries him, as well as the items in the game. Counter matchup wise, most hunters are going to be just fine into Chiron. Don't eat the 1. Chiron's 1 is to be how he's mainly clearing, and then if that hits you, he'll poke with the 2. So don't be getting hit by the 1, and overall you should have a fairly good matchup. Try not to get run down too much and just learn how to win those trade outs, because you have almost every hunter autoing a lot harder and doing a lot more consistent damage than Chiron, because Chiron has longer cooldowns. Next up on the list is Guan Yu. Guan Yu, another one that to me should not be hyper surprising, because we just saw healing massively buffed. On top of healing getting buffed, I'm not saying healing, like the actual fact that you heal for more, that did not get buffed. They reduced healing done. But for all those gods that had their healing reduced, they added some other aspect to their kit. Guan Yu's change is absolutely crazy. The 1 is giving 2-second cooldown off of your abilities. And the 1 is also giving 1-second cooldown off of your teammates' abilities. So when you heal your teammates, they get a second off of their cooldown. Pair that, you're 2 seconds off of your own abilities, you're 1 second off of your teammates' abilities with Sekhmet Scepter, which is a brand new item in the game, which gives power, health, cooldown, and MP5. And it has a proc that every time you heal for the next 6 seconds, when you do damage, you get 0.5 seconds off your cooldowns. So you get 3, and it can only proc once every second. So you're getting 3 seconds off of your cooldowns. If your 2 is giving you cooldown, you have max cooldown because you're a warrior. It's already built into your kit pretty much. And then you have that proccing. Your 1 is going off 3 times, 4 times in a 6-second window, that's a lot of healing and a lot of extra damage from your teammates. Your teammates are getting that cooldown each time you heal. So they're using more abilities, so they're doing more damage. Guan Yu should be prioritized and should be a high value pick in your games. Guan Yu, before this patch, it was actually starting to come back. I've seen him played a lot, especially in ranked. Competitively, he was played a little bit. Very strong god then. Now he's 10 times stronger than he was because he has this crazy team fight aspect that people don't even know. They aren't even aware of. Counter pick wise, hard lockdown. Things that interrupt his 3 are going to cancel a lot of his damage. So you've got silences, you know, knock silence, Ganesh silence. You have any kind of raw hard CC interrupt, so like Hercules stuns. Hercules will be one of those matchups you aren't gonna like most of the time. You'll end up having to level your 2 to clear rather than your 3, and it can be a struggle to keep up with that. Then anti-heal. Op wash, while you'll dive op wash very well, any healing you do will cause you to get stunned and be a hard turn onto your dive. And then Odin, things that'll lock you in place, can be countered, by your Phantom Shells and all those things, but still, they're harder matchups for a majority of the game. They are not insanely impossible matchups. They just make your life not as easy. Next up is Hebo. Hebo has just been doing well in general all year and the end of last year. I don't think anything's going to change until they nerf him. I don't think they really need the nerf. I think it's okay for him to be so highly, so strong, because he's a closer range mage that can be very difficult to play when you are being dove. That's his counter. And gods that counter him, Fenrir, Daji, Cleodana, Ravana, things that are either immune to the knockup, can immune the knockup, or can do damage through the knockup and not, actually be knocked up. And then anything that can really keep its distance on Hebo will be strong as well. There isn't a lot that can do that. I'd mainly be, as Hebo, watching out for things that are knock immune. Fenrir's 3 will pretty much 100 to 0 you, and he is knock immune. Building a defensive item in those situations would be a solution, so you don't die as fast as they do, even though they're knock immune. And then you guys already know Hebo's, like, why Hebo excels. Short cooldown on the 1 and the 3 overall. You don't really need cooldown built into it. Mages right now are probably the best class in the game because late game is guaranteed 99% of your matches, and Hebo's late game is 3-1 one-shot somebody. So that's why Hebo is where he is. Horus, I love Horus. I liked Horus before this change. And this change, they reduced Horus's 3 cooldown to like a 7-second cooldown or something absolutely ridiculous. So anytime you engage on Horus, your heal is going to be up, which is your disengage. That's also more heals for your team, so you're able to spam heal throughout team fights. You're pretty much always doing something. The god has protection shred on his 2 and a knockup, and his combo is a 2 stun, auto, wait a second, knock up, and they're CC'd. You're basically CC'd for like 2.5, 3 seconds. 3 seconds of solo CC while you're also pen shredded is insane onto any target, especially late game, because if a support dives or tries, as a support, I try to engage into a team that has a Horus. That Horus just has to stun me, CC me, and the Hunter's gonna auto me 4 times, and I'm gonna die. I'm not gonna be able to play the game. I love Horus right now. I liked Horus before. I think Horus might be the best single target support, if that makes sense. Just raw kill this person, which is a good thing to have in ranked because it causes your teammates to follow up. They see a target CC, they know they're going to hit all their stuff, so they follow up whoever you go on as Horus, which is hyper value. Gods that counter Horus. Ares is going to be a decent matchup into Horus in terms of crippling and stopping his movement, his stun, his heal, all that stuff, but committing to just going on Horus as Ares, not always the best choice. Anti-heal is also going to do very well in Horus. Your op washes, your Odin's not as good though because you can heal out of the circle. And then overall laning phase, you don't have a lot of counter matchups. Try not to get out pressured by anything. You're not really worried about heavy CC. You're not worried about many of your matchups. You have great clear, great lane presence. Horus overall is a very, very strong support. I would not play him anywhere else. I've seen him played in solo and a little bit in jungle. I don't recommend that at all. Ishtar, probably our best hunter in the game currently. That might change with the build shifting, but Ishtar does very well with crit. She's, ever since she came out, she's been good with crit, and crit is the meta build right now. The crit build actually just got even better and crazier, which is wild because you've got the arrows that give crit now. You have people building into the boomerang crit item, and Ishtar just excels overall. She's got a CC immune ultimate. She has movement on her 3. Her shotgun, which is her using her 1 and then using the second version of the 1. So the 1-1 is the circle volley, great for clear. The 1-2 is the shotgun, which is a cone of auto attacks that come out from your center. And if you're on top of somebody, it will instantly kill them. And then your 1-3 is your ranged auto attack, which gives you extra range and speed on your auto attacks. That is great for sieging. So Ishtar has a amazing clear ability on top of her regular abilities, an amazing, you know, phase check, either objective burn, so you're killing a fire giant, a gold fury, it does a ton of damage. If a jungler is diving you, it will turn and insta kill them. And then if you are playing under a siege or you're being sieged, it gives you a ton of distance to poke out squishies you wouldn't normally be able to hit. On top of that, mini mez on the 2, super strong ability just to, you know, add some time into your, not some time, buy you some time in any 1v1s or any fights. Just allows you to get more damage off while they're CC'd. And then your 3 buys you even more time because you're not taking any damage during it, and you do a lot of damage return. Gets you, you know, between your 2 and your 3, you're adding in a bunch of extra damage when you're not taking damage. That's high value. Then the cripple stun from your ultimate seals the deal, gives you a massive, very strong team fight ultimate. It's good in the hyper late game because it'll stop supports from doing their job, and during that time you can pretty much kill them because you're doing so much damage, your mage is doing so much damage at that point. So Ishtar is hyper excelling. Counter matchups, I wouldn't say she really has super counter matchups. It's gonna be another, anybody who can dive her or stop her 3 from going off is going to be super clutch. Gods like Ravana in the jungle will be hard for Ishtar to deal with because Ravana can immune any of the ult damage that he chooses to. Also can dive on top of her after she dashes away. She isn't the best at self peel. She's more of a turn and fight type of thing. So anyone who can burst equally to her or any crit gods, it's going to be hard for her to play the game. But there are not a lot of gods that make it hard for her to play the game. Maui fell down a little bit because they've nerfed him, but he's still very strong. One of the better setup support ultimates in Smite's history. Very frustrating god with a really good rotation of abilities between his auto attack pool and his actual pool ability, and then the ultimate, and then the stun on the 3. He can pretty much CC you and keep you in a general like 5-foot space for 5 seconds, if not more, when he's able to free cast. That is which is most of the time in at least the early to early mid game. Later in the game, he struggles a little bit because he's taking a ton of damage, but at the same time he's got that CC. As long as his team is committing with him, he's okay. Counter pick wise, Cripple's gonna make it a little bit more difficult for him to play the game overall. And in the hyper late game, anything that's gonna, you know, a Wheelix or anything that's gonna really pull him out of the air or stop him from doing what he wants to do, that's also gonna be difficult for you to play around, so watch out for those matchups. Merlin is next on our list. Merlin has just gotten better and better and better as this year has gone on. It's because mage damage is so high and the items, all of which, you know, any which build really works on most of these mages, especially a god like Merlin. As long as you have some some CDR, you're good because you're able to spam. Outside of that, your clear is great for laning phase. Your damage over walls, which is a massive kind of just something you're looking for as a mage right now, is huge because 90% of Merlin's damage is going to be going over walls. You know, you got his void stance, his 1-2 is always going to be over the wall. His frost stance, his 2 can go over the wall. His fire stance, his 2 can go over the wall. He's fairly safe because he does, between beads, Aegis, and a blink, he's got a good amount of mobility. But while being overall safe, if he's not positioning properly, he's going to be dove. That's going to be his counterplay. Assassins and warriors able to jump on top of Merlin and do high burst damage or lock him down is going to make it impossible for him to play. Does, however, have great turn potential. Merlin might not be able to CC you and run away, but he could drop his whole kit on top of himself and kill you while you're diving him. With his ultimate having the mini knockup potential, as well as the, you know, the extra damage from the ultimate stance change, and, you know, dropping a frost 3 on himself or a fire 2 on himself, that damage is so high with the builds right now that he kills anyone diving him, even if he ends up dying. So you end up getting some kind of a trade if he plays it properly. Counter matchups in lane, not gonna have a whole lot. Things that can do poke damage from range is gonna be solid, but at the same time, he can usually clear from a decent distance. So he shouldn't be losing lane to too many gods. Thoth can be a frustrating god to deal with because Thoth is able to poke you from a little bit farther than you'll be able to poke back. But that's not a matchups you need to really worry about. You don't worry about your mid lane matchups because as long as you clear, you just leave the lane. You have to worry about that matchup. Next is Morgan Le Fay. She's had a hard comeback this year. They pretty much reverted all her nerfs in I think the most recent patch, or maybe it was the patch before that. They pretty much, Morgan Le Fay was broken for a while. Like, her damage was insanely broken, and it had to do with her damage numbers as well as the cooldown. Well, I'm pretty sure they nerfed her damage and reduced her or upped her cooldowns. This last patch where they reverted it, I don't think they upped her damage, but I think they reverted the cooldowns on everything. but that damage is made up by the items that are in the game now. So it's almost like she's back to being the old Morgan Le Fay. She's almost untouchable in terms of diving on her. There are a few gods, Dodgy, Ravana, things that are knock-up immune once again because her self-peel is her 2. But it doesn't even matter because even if you immune or you're still doing damage, you know, Dodgy's knock immune during the 2, so you're doing damage during it. Morgan Le Fay doesn't care because her kit is doing so much damage with such a short cooldown. She drops the 2 on herself for peel. She drops the 3 on herself for movement. She can drop the 1 on herself for self-peel or for a slow. And then she has this ultimate that is huge and doing a lot of damage. Heals her for a little bit. So she's got 4 AoE damage dealing abilities. Now, let's say she's not being dove. Let's say you got vision control, you're aggressing, you're in the jungle. If you're in the jungle right now in Morgan Le Fay, you can hit half of a team by tossing an ability over the wall. Now, if you're being aggressed on, you can shut down any corridor you want with all of your abilities. So you could shut down a left corridor with a 1, a middle corridor with a 2, and a right corridor with a 3, and then say they're still diving, you could ultimate and kill them. Her damage is absurd, her cooldowns are very low, and her jungle presence as a mage is, I won't say unmatched, but there are very few gods that match her, and that's why you're seeing her in that S tier. Next up, I'm in a love-hate relationship with Naja, man. I hated playing Naja for a long time, but now Naja is very fun because of how good the god is, but it's also really frustrating to play against. So Naja is back to old school Naja. Back in the day on Naja, you pretty much built a Deathbringer in the mid, late, or late game, and that's all the crit you need because your ultimate's automatically critting. So Naja's back to that place, and even more so right now than Naja was at the beginning of the year because of these items that are in the game. So on a god like Naja, you can run Sekhmet Scepter, which is that cooldown health power item, which has, as a tier 1 item, has the most stats on it for any jungle tier 1 item. So it's the best tier 1 item. So you build Sekhmet's first, then you build into a Jotun's, and then you build into a Hydra's. By doing this, you have pretty good, you know, sustain overall for your mana, so you're able to spam and do what you want. I like going Eye of the Jungle for attack speed because the auto attacks are ridiculous. Then you pair those 3 cooldown items, which are giving you 40% cooldown, with a Crusher and a Heartseeker, if you want to go full ability. But you don't need to go full ability. You could go into, you're talking about a starter and 4 other items. You have 2 item slots. You can go Crusher and Deathbringer or Heartseeker and Deathbringer. And when you do this, the ultimate's going to one-shot mages. The ultimate's gonna one-shot hunters in the late game, and the ultimate's gonna one-shot any junglers that don't have extra defense. Every time. Just a flat-out ult by itself will 100-0 them. With what you're talking about, fire giants, red pods, 3k pods, that ultimate's getting up without, you know, you don't need to have a 40k lead. You just need to have a super late game build with late game pots. That ultimate by itself will do 2500 damage. That damage will 100-0 every squishy. Nothing you can do about it. On top of that, the early to mid game, Naja's got some of the best lockdown and control with this build because your 3, your 2, and your 1 are on no cooldowns essentially with this build. You're able to ring bounce, stun in, auto attack, pop your 2, heal, auto attack, and then your 3 and your 1 are back up again. We've seen where Naja has this one-shot potential, but we've never seen where Naja has the one-shot potential and also the sustained damage because you're able to get a second rotation of abilities off faster than ever before. So Naja is massively skyrocketing for me because of the stupid healing item that healing item they put in the game. On top of just overall the playstyle, counters to Naja, Magi's is a very, very good item in a Naja. If there's a Naja and you're getting ulted by it and you're having trouble with it, buy a Magi's. It will make Naja cake every single time. Upgrading your beads early is going to counter Naja because if Naja's not able to get these stun into beads into ult combos, then Naja's not doing his job. And then we talk about actual, just raw, hard matchups. Things that displace Naja really consistently make playing the god hard. Susano can be fairly difficult. Ravana can be kind of difficult because you have the root heal kind of combo to match it on top of a lot of immunity and the ultimate. So your odds of dodging a Naja ult skyrocket compared to most gods. But outside of that, there aren't a ton of terrible matchups. It's mainly just as Naja, you gotta watch out for Magi's and beats and position based on who has those up, who doesn't have those up, who's building a Magi's, who's not building a Magi's. Those things are what you're looking for. You're kind of playing more against yourself and your own limitations than you are other people. On to another hunter, we have Rama. Rama's been, since the beginning of the year, up there with Ishtar. Very good clear. The biggest thing for Rama, we don't even talk about it. You know Rama's pure auto attacks. The auto attack builds are great. Crit builds are great. Obviously going to excel with that. In terms of a 1v1 matchup, your 2 stim, that attack speed you get from your 2 is one of the better stims in the game. Your 1 also buffs your auto attacks, makes them easier to hit, do a little bit more damage. So your overall trading in terms of 1v1s is almost always in your favor. You also slow with your 1, which makes landing the autos even easier. That pressure alone is scary. But then the big aspect for Rama is the ultimate. Rama is one of the only hunters that can safely and for free dive. You've seen this since the god came out. You've seen comps built where Rama excels in them, and most people don't even realize it. So a massive comp in the SPL for a little while was a Rat and a Thor. You saw either Thor solo and Rat jungle or Rat solo and Thor jungle. So that's a heavy dive, right? That's 2 gods that are always going to be dive. There's other versions of this. You've got, you know, Vamana's diving. There's tons. There's, you know, every other god can dive, right? Well, Rama was picked into these comps because of Rama's ability to go into the sky and do extra damage. Because if you go up in the air and you help your jungle and solo kill their target instantly while you're not taking damage, guess what? Your solo and jungle can come back and kill whoever's anywhere near you at that point because you have a 4v5. Or, you know, say your mid dies, then it's still a 4v4 where your solo and your jungle probably took 0 damage from you insta-killing. Best case, you know, you insta-kill whoever they go on first, and then they just go to the other squishy. And you have another shot out of your Rama ult to hit that person too, and you help them kill that person. There's so much potential out of dive mages and hunters, and the ones that can do it safe excel, and Rama's one of them. Counter matchups. If Rama loses lane, it's a little bit annoying, but overall Rama's always going to be an ult in that team fight. Rama has no real CC immunity outside of the ultimate, which will buy you time, but usually result in your death if you're already that low. So I'd say the biggest thing is Rama's lack of instant mobility that is safe because of the no CC immunity on a rollout and stuff like that. It's really easy to sit on a Rama. Dive gods are going to make Rama struggle, but if the Rama's smart and using the ultimate correctly, Rama will not struggle. Rama will have no bad matchups. Ravana. This is what I think a couple people might argue, but with Sekhmet's Scepter, the new healing item in the game, working the way it does, Ravana is another one of those junglers that can get a full rotation of abilities off over and over again, but he can do it safer than everybody because of the immunity on his 2 and his ultimate being able to reduce damage while also avoid damage because you can use it to leap any damage coming out that you want to avoid. So Ravana's 3 is going to proc a heal. It's going to proc that Sekhmet's, and then the 3 is going to come back up, the 1's going to come back up, the 2 is going to come back up, and Ravana should kill you with a full damage Ravana build onto a squishy. You're pretty much 100 to 0ing them anyway. Pair that with the fact that you're not taking damage, with the fact that you can keep chasing and dive virtually any god that uses Aegis or, you know, their dash to get away, and the abilities being so easy to land that Ravana is up there in that S tier. In terms of counter matchups, there's not a lot of counter matchups. It's mainly pressure. You want to make sure your mid, your duo, or your solo, somebody in the game has pressure automatically, because Ravana does not guarantee pressure. Ravana plays insane off of pressure, but he doesn't create it. So high pressure, high, you know, fight junglers can actually match up decently into Ravana. Gods I kind of like into Ravana. I like Loki in Ravana because Ravana doesn't want a 2, you know, just dot damage, which is most of Loki's damage. His 1 does damage over time, his 3 does damage over time, his 2 does damage over time. His auto attacks are going to be coming out and not being immune. So Ravana struggles to choose the right thing to immune, but he can immune the ultimate. So on Loki, you're kind of buying time to force that ultimate, but really there isn't a lot. There's not a lot of stuff you're going to struggle with Ravana. It's never been that way. Mercury is one god that will win every time you 1v1. Should never lose or win a 1v1 versus a Mercury as Ravana. So watch out for that matchup. In reality, you should be banning those top gods anyway, that Mercury. Susano's next up. Susano's straightforward. He's been very frustrating this year, especially with Bluestone being good. Even with Bluestone not being picked up, if you're going Eye of the Jungle, if you're going Bumba's Hammer, still very strong, ups is clear. It's his presence overall on the map. His 2's disruption and his ultimate in team fights. His ultimate is the best assassin team fight ultimate there is in Smite. It is a massive circle that knocks up. So we're talking an unmissable, high damage, late game it's doing 1,000+ damage ability that has a knockup in it, which knockups are the best CC in Smite's history, and they will forever be the best CC in Smite's history. If you're playing Susano and you knock up 2 squishies with that ultimate, you should automatically win the team fight, which means you should automatically win the game because you're always going to be landing those knockups if you're playing correctly, playing patient, playing smart. Biggest downfall to Susano is if you don't know how to auto attack cancel, which is not difficult. I have a video on it. Google weekend auto attack canceling. It'll teach you how to do it in 5 minutes. It won't even take that long. Auto attack canceling is not hard, but you have to be able to auto attack cancel to play Susano. Susano doubles his damage with auto attack cancels. So if you're gonna play Susano, you have to auto attack cancel. Otherwise, you're losing half your damage. There's no point in playing it. That's it. Counter matchups, cripple, absolutely destroy Susano. Anything that can CC and avoid damage at the same time from Susano is massive. So a Wheelix, the 2 flip is going to avoid a lot of damage from Susano while also being able to knock up and kind of control him. So that's going to be a harder matchup when played properly in the 1v1. And then, like I said, any hard CC coming out from other gods or cripples or silences. Ganesha silence can be very annoying. Nox can be very annoying. Cleo is going to be a good matchup in Susano because Cleo is knock up immune on her 1 while also having a silence on that 1 and just an immense amount of raw damage to kind of compete with Susano's kit. So watch out for some of those matchups. Shouldn't be too bad overall. Sylvanas, they just made it so his heal now hits creeps. It only does 1/4 of the damage and healing, I believe, but it's still extra clear. So they're upping Sylvanas's clear, making his presence in lane that much better. His late game team fights, Blink ultimate, another knockup ultimate CC, really strong in team fights, as well as just more sustained. It's more sustained. Gods that are going to counter Sylvanas are going to be anything that can match clear. So it would be a combo duo lane that would out clear Sylvanas and his hunter. That's one thing you're going to want to watch out for, because if you lose lane as Sylvanas, you are in trouble. And then outside of that, the downside to Sylvanas, I would say, which still leaves him in S tier, is he'll proc Ankh onto his teammates. So watch out for that. If Ankh goes up, probably don't use your 2 and just let it wear off. Counter matchups, I'm not going to say any supports are guaranteed counter matchups to Sylvanas. There's just a lot of stuff that can play around him and do just fine. Look for high clear. High clear gods are going to be great. Horus is actually a good matchup into Sylvanas because Horus can make it so killing Sylvanas is an option, where most other supports can't really create the pressure to kill a Sylvanas. Last jungler in S tier is Thanatos. Thanatos, already very strong jungler. Already one of the best overall just snowball carrier team ability jungler in Smite for ranked. Sekhmet Scepter makes it so Susano. Thanatos' cooldowns are even lower than they've ever been. Pair that with the god already doing a lot of damage, and then they just buffed him. They reduced the cooldown on his 1 and his 3 out of nowhere. So his cooldowns are even lower. You have Sekhmets, you have lower cooldowns in general because they buffed him. He is excelling in this meta, and there's nothing you can say to argue in my mind, because he doesn't really lose any matchups until late game, and then late game he will lose some. He'll get harder. The CC will be too much to matchup damage, or just raw crit damage from like a Mercury. He won't be able to out trade. But if he's getting the jump on anybody, he will win the 1v1 because it was auto attack canceling. 1 auto, 3 auto. That's 2 high just procs. He hits very hard in the late game. These items are going to allow his, basically you can 1 auto, 3 auto, and then 1 again. It'll be right back up. So Thanatos is doing great. Counter matchup to Thanatos are things that can avoid his abilities, his 1 and his 3. A Wheelix, one of those gods that will be able to flip the 1 and the 3. And then outside of that, I'd say your hard CC gods or your raw turning gods. So Susano is going to have a lot of potential against Thanatos because of the CC combos. Hebo, going to have a lot of presence against the Thanatos because of the CC combos. Mercury because of the crit. And then one of my other matchups that I've always kind of hated as Thanatos was Nemesis. Nemesis shield pretty much guarantees that the Thanatos scythe isn't going to be as impactful. It's going to trade more evenly or more towards Nemesis than you would expect. And then Nemesis's ult plus an auto plus a 2 is going to do similar damage to Thanatos scythe auto 2 auto, or sorry, 3, whatever. Sorry, scythe auto 3 auto. So Nem, especially with the crit build, is going to out kill you and pretty much insta kill you before you can react if the Nem is aggressing. As Thanatos, play back, try to be the aggressor, try not to get jumped on, and you'll be perfectly fine. Tiamat, tankiest mage outside of Zhong Kui in the game. In that melee stance or close range stance, whatever you want to call it, Tiamat is the tankiest mage in the game, while also pumping out some of the highest numbers in the game while still having mobility in the kit. The setup off of the ultimate into the slow or the ultimate into the tornado in team fights is just, it goes without, like, you don't even realize. It's doing so much damage, but because there's so much stuff going on, it's damage you don't notice you're taking. Tiamat has kind of that pressure on the map with the creeps that most other mages don't have, while also maintaining the same team fight damage, a higher safety, I say higher safety features on the god because of the mitigations, because of the movement, because of the CC, and that boosts him. That just keeps him up there in that, or her up there in that S tier. Then last up is Yu Wong, who I've had as one of our best mages in the game. I think he's the exact same place. One of the safer mages. Similar to Tiamat, except for his 3 is just a stronger safety ability. His ultimate with the CC immunity, his lower cooldowns, and his raw damage that he's pumping out kind of goes unmatched, while his abilities are very easy to land. So that is going to keep him up in that S tier. Counter matchups. There is nothing in my mind that actually counters Yu Wong. The biggest thing you can do is play very patient and wait for him to use his 3 and then dive on him. There are gods that could dive on him and then buy themselves a lot of time to re-dive on him, like Camazotz. You can, you jump onto a Yu Wong, throw an ability, the Yu Wong goes in the air, then you could also go in the air to maintain your engagement onto that Yu Wong. But that's not going to be a hard counter matchup. It's never going to be a hard counter matchup. Yu Wong doesn't have a lot of struggle comps. Multiple diving gods will make it difficult for you, but as long as you're returning damage, should be fine. That is our S tier. I know it was a lot. I know it was a lot of details. Hopefully this helps you guys understand that whole S tier and why I place these gods where I place them and what the thought process is behind why they're good. And I hope you guys liked the video. Please hit the like button if you did. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in the video later tomorrow, the next day, and the next day.